Hi, I'm Dave McNamara, and this is the Good People Podcast.
It's a tip of the cap, it's a pat on the back, it's a smile from ear to ear. They're the good people from round here.
Welcome to another episode of the Good People Podcast, brought to you by In Other Good News. My name is Andy, and in this podcast I get to chat to some really good human beings. Today is no exception. Today I've got a man with me who is very important, actually. He's the CEO of Foodbank Victoria. He's a very kind and generous man, and it's a real pleasure and honour to have Dave McNamara on the show. Dave, welcome.
Eddie, thanks for having me.
Dave, it's great to have you, and it's really nice to be able to sit down for a few minutes, take a break and have a chat, because I know that you're a busy guy and there's a lot going on. In fact, probably there's the most going on that's ever been going on for you. So, and we'll cover that in a sec. Foodbank Victoria, you're the CEO of Foodbank Victoria. Also, I might have to throw this in here now. You're one of those mad people that goes swimming in winter.
Correct.
Yeah. And also, at one point, you were nominated for Australian of the Year.
That was a while ago, yes, I was.
That's crazy. Tell me about the swimming. What makes you go swimming at all times of the year?
Oh, joy, wonder, just complete disconnection from the normal world to a new world.
Yeah.
See wonderful things, amazing things.
What do you see?
I've seen giant stingrays, seals, schools of fish, dolphins, too many jellyfish.
Oh, yeah. Where do you do that? Just off the...
Just off Willie Beach.
Yep.
Yep.
There's a whole bunch of people that do that, isn't there?
Yeah, there are.
Yeah. Some people say that you would feel good after doing something like that the first thing of every day.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You come out feeling completely different to how you went in.
Yeah, and that might be a pretty useful thing for the line of work that you're in. It might be nice to refresh and have a clean start to every day.
Yeah, I reckon it. I started during the lockdowns because I used to be a pool swimmer.
Oh, right.
And the first swim kind of went, oh my God, this is surreal.
Yeah.
And then it's just ever since then, it just helps reframe everything.
Yeah. Well, it tests you a little bit because it's freezing.
Yeah. Well, it's freezing. Around August, it gets really bad. But
yeah. You were saying it takes a little while for it to cool down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's cooled down now.
Yeah. Well, better you than me. But day to day, you're the CEO of Foodbank Victoria. And I'd love to touch on what that looks like, because I'll make an assumption here that if you haven't, and if you're listening or watching and you haven't heard of Foodbank, that's okay, but you need to know about it because they serve a critical role at the moment, especially. So maybe, do you want to touch on what Foodbank is, but also like the current impact?
Sure. So Foodbank started back in 1930. Great Depression, bottom had fallen out of the wheat market and wool market here in Victoria. And the government of the day set up the Vic Relief Committee. And our mandate then was to help Victorians in all forms of crisis. And we've been doing that since 1930. Merged with Foodbank Victoria back in 2006, I think it was. And we are, from what we can tell, we're certainly the oldest food relief organisation in Australia, if not the world.
It's unbelievable. And actually, you were celebrated at Government House recently. I had the opportunity, fortunately, to be invited to that celebration. That was fantastic. It was actually your 92nd birthday by the time you got there, wasn't it?
Yeah. COVID sort of pushed it out a little bit.
Hey, well, I hope, look, I'm hanging around because I want to get an invite to the 100.
Me too.
Yeah. We'll come back to Foodbank. Looking at your LinkedIn profile, let's go right back. One of the earlier things that are listed on there, you're an IT guy.
Yeah.
Right? And then you've ended up somehow, IT guy ends up running a food relief thing. But how do you go, like, getting into IT in the first place, but then changing, because you've gone through a few different things?
Yeah, jack of all trades, master of none. So I started I guess, in hospitality and Pizza Hut, and did a management course there, and was there for 4 or 5 years, and then decided to travel. I went to Europe, did the European backpacking for a few months, came back and thought I should do something more serious. And my dad was in IT with Ford, and thought, oh, maybe IT. And Unisys had a graduate program, so I applied to get into that and got in as a graduate, and spent 12 months in Sydney, and then the next 3 years or so in Melbourne, working in the commercial and transportation division.
Right.
Yeah.
In IT.
Yeah.
And then you moved on to that. You created a business. Was that after that?
Yeah, after that, look, I did quite well in IT, and decided I always wanted to be a chef. So I bought a cafe, and
Where was that? Where was the cafe?
in Malvern Road,
Right.
in Paran.
Yep.
Just opposite the Paran Magistrates Court, just
Okay.
near there. Set up it was called Cafe Tuscany, and was there for the closure by Jeff Kennett of the primary school next door, which was great income stream for me.
Oh.
The Paran Magistrates Court, they closed down all the courts bar 2. The small little law firms that were there closed as well, and then suddenly I lost about 80% of my clientele.
Jeez.
So started catering business off the side. So I made apparently very nice pies and cakes. So my pies I sold in David Jones Food Hall, and cakes across the rest of Paran, Chapel Street, etc. So that became that kept me going until I could sell the cafe. And
Yeah, right. Dave's Pies. What was your specialty?
the most popular ones were beef burgundy, chicken with the Dijon cream sauce, pesto, eggplant, tomato and cheese,
Stop it.
Chiang Mai beef curry. Yeah, there's a few others.
We're going for pies for lunch.
Yeah.
I can't get a Dave's Pie though,
No,
I guess.
not anymore.
No, that's a shame. Haven't got a few left in the freezer there.
Nah, all gone.
So you started your own business. Then you've moved on. You become a sous chef at one point.
Yeah, I decided that I still liked cooking, so I went and got my qualifications at William Angliss, and
Yep.
I think my first cooking job, real job, was at Cafe Trotters in Lygon Street, and then another mate of mine was working at Mario's, and they had another place called the Continental in Paran, and I ended up working at the Continental for 5 years, I think, and they had a dinner and show upstairs where I was sort of the main chef there for a while, and I got to see some of the best, music going around, which
Yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah. Okay. And from there, I mean, we were almost hitting Foodbank by that point, aren't we? After that,
No.
we got
no.
something else in between.
Yeah, in between. So I met my current wife.
Yep.
My current wife, that doesn't sound good, does
Yeah,
it?
yeah, that's
My
right.
wife.
My wife.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think in the first year we were going out, we saw each other on weekends once or twice, and that was during holidays. So she had a job teaching adult migrants English.
Oh, right.
And then I just thought, well, if I want this relationship to continue, I better find something else. So I took a management job at Crown Casino. Some people that I knew through the Continental had set up a cafe there, and I worked for them for the next 7 years at Crown and helped them with a few of their other cafes as well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Moving from there was a more charitable role.
Yeah.
Coming after that, what was the next role?
I moved to Sacred Heart Mission. So a friend of mine who used to help out with cutlery, crockery, chemicals. We'd been good mates for a while, and then some mental health problems, and he disappeared for a few months and then turned back up again, and he'd lost everything and was living out of his delivery van at St Kilda Marina, and he was occasionally going to Sacred Heart Mission for lunch.
Right.
I was looking for something with a bit more meaning than after working at Crown for 7 years, and just coincidentally a role came up managing the meals program there. So I went and had a look, and I remember walking down the corridor looking at their storerooms and everything, thinking, wow, great produce. And then I went into the dining room, and I guess that blew me away, because I think I had my own beliefs about what disadvantage was, and I was confronted with families elderly, street workers, pimps, drug addicts, mental health issues, but a whole diaspora of humanity, and like 300 people. And it just, and then I thought about my friend being here, and then I looked at the food and I just thought, oh my God, I can't have my friend eating this food. This is just not, and they should have the best. So I took the role, brought in another great chef, and together we turned it into a free kitchen from a soup kitchen. Free restaurant specialising in peasant, Italian and French food, with a vegetarian option. And within a couple of months you could see people changing. The noise in the dining room was changing. There was more laughter. It was kind of really cool. And then we did some other things. We set a barista program in place. We then did a Cert 2 in commercial cookery and worked with local restaurants to give people the opportunity to find a pathway out of disadvantage into working in hospitality, and then an apprenticeship program, which is still running. And then, we were customers of Foodbank at the time. And the CEO of Foodbank came for a visit, and I told him all the things that were wrong with Foodbank, and literally went upstairs, hopped on Seek, and there was a job for the operations manager at Foodbank.
Right.
And I thought, I've probably done my dash here, but I'll try anyway.
By slamming the the CEO, yeah.
And got the role.
Right. So the CEO thought, this guy has some passion for it. Must care a bit.
Yeah.
And so then you got the role. So you started as operations.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was operations manager for 5 years. So the first thing for me was always about healthy food, because I could see the impact that it had. So healthy body, healthy mind. Foodbank was running a fresh program, but it was only 35 or 55,000 kilos of fresh a year. And so I set up a farms to family program, working through the wholesale market, which at that stage was at Footscray, and working through producers just to get more fresh into the business.
Yep.
And now that's at over 3 million kilos a year.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Were you still in the same... So Foodbank currently, Victoria, the main office is in Yarraville.
Yeah.
Were you there at the time?
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
and was it the same size, or have you expanded since then?
No, we took over the warehouse next door.
Yep.
Just so currently we sit across 10,000 square metres, and then we've got another warehouse in Brooklyn, which runs the school breakfast program, which is, for those boffins out there, 6,000 square metres.
Yep.
And we're building 2 new sites in Ballarat and Morwell, which are completely different.
Yeah. And, I mean, you need to grow because, even just the pandemic period has escalated things. And then the last year of the interest rate rises and things have escalated crazy. I want to tell you about a time I was sitting on, it was back in 2021, and I was sitting on Melbourne Road, and I'm heading back. I was doing coffee deliveries, and I'm heading back to the West Gate, and I'm stuck in traffic, and I couldn't move. And I'm going, what's going on? There must be a crash or something. And I actually had to do a delivery over near Whitehall Street. And I put 2 and 2 together. But that's the infamous day that the Foodbank drive-through actually blocked the West Gate, isn't it?
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah. Do you want to explain what happened that day? You've told this story before, but for those who haven't heard it, it's an amazing... I guess it makes it really real about the food insecurity issues.
Yeah, I think, look, it all goes back to the bushfires in Black Saturday. And what we were seeing was that there was a lot of people trying to get out of the East Gippsland area because it was during holidays, but at the same time, there were a lot of people trying to take food and help down there. The Premier was asking everyone to stay off the road. So I just decided, well, why don't we turn the warehouse into a drive-through distribution centre? So I think in the biggest day we had 1,485 vehicles through the warehouse just dropping off food. Mums and dads taking the kids shopping. They could see the food being unpacked, put into hampers, the army then turning up and taking the food down to East Gippsland.
Yep.
So during the lockdown, no one could have contact. but you could see these recurrent lockdowns were starting to impact on people. I could see it with our team. So I just thought, well, why don't we just flip it? And instead of dropping off, you pick up. So we decided to do drive-throughs. And the one you're talking about, that was 400 vehicles in the first hour and stretched back over the Westgate Bridge and blocked off the Williamstown Road exit. So it was shut down.
Which is kilometres away.
Which is kilometres away.
Yeah,
at least 3 kilometres away.
Yeah, which it's like that's horrific, right? Like, because that means there's all these people who need food that bad that they're going to come and drive and sit in traffic and come and collect it. And that was a case of people literally coming through and you would just put food in the boot.
Yep.
And then off they go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no questions asked.
No questions asked.
Yeah. And I think that, the scary thing for me is, and this is something I've only sort of really come across through recent times, is that a lot of these people are people who've never needed it before as well, right?
Yeah.
So there's a huge percentage of the people coming through.
Over 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, COVID started to change everything. Because as we were just starting to get our feet back on the ground and starting to energize the economy and get back to normal, that's when you saw the war in Ukraine, supply chain issues, and now interest rate rises. And just families, individuals have just struggled to, keep getting up and recovering. So the community's been amazing in supporting each other. It's just makes you proud to be a part of this community, really.
It really does. And actually, do you know what? I'm going to drop the hard sell right now because we have been working to support Foodbank for a few years now. And if you want to, I'll just say this now and I'll drop it at the end as well, but if you want to support Foodbank, you can actually purchase some of our coffee, which we've been selling for since August 2020. And every bag of our coffee actually supplies a donation to Foodbank. And also you can head to, so that's iogn.com.au and you can purchase some coffee there and we ship Australia-wide. Or you can also just make an actual donation there. You can make a cash donation. And it's quite timely that I'm talking to you because we've actually just surpassed $20,000 donated.
Wow.
Which is, all that from, and that is community who are getting behind a good cause and they understand the importance of it. So please, if you haven't already had a look at us, to check that out because every order sends some money over to the Foodbank warehouse, and it is a real eye opener if you go over and have a look. Do you want to talk about the amount of stuff that just goes through there? Because it's like until you've seen it, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's hard to visualize the scale.
Yeah.
But so we work through every part of the food supply chain. Some primary producers through manufacturers, importers, exporters, wholesalers, retailers, wherever there's food that's still edible and in some cases not sellable, we rescue it and drive through, I think it was 18 million meals out to the Victorian community last year. So in terms of the volume and the mix, it's quite, as you said, you've got to see it. It's hard to talk. But the equivalent of, if you see an MCG footy grand final, 100,000 people, we're feeding more than that every 2 days into the Victorian community. So if you can visualise an MCG crowd at capacity, that's how many people need meals, and we're shipping those out every 2 days.
And we're probably finding, imagine they're all lining up for a hot dog at the end. That's everyone needing that. And that's not everyone. That's
not everyone. We don't know. I think there's a lot of shame and stigma around putting your hand up for help, especially when it comes to food. And we've seen this across regional communities and metropolitan communities. It's just people are scared to ask for help. They don't want to be judged that they can't feed themselves because that's a really hard thing to do. But what you saw through COVID is that people care and people want to help. And just look at the bushfires and the response there. If people know that people need help, we are an amazing community of just wanting to help people. We just need to know how and where and when.
Yep.
And I think that's why I love Foodbank, is because we're a community organisation. We're run by community, we're run for community, and we're powered by community. So it really, and that's every part of community, from food manufacturers to mums and dads donating money to everyone, government helping us, to then us being the conduit to get the food out to people. And so now our strategy has gone from purely just providing food to being much more clever about it, much more individually focused. So we've got a new strategy where there are 79 LGAs in Victoria. We use data now to understand those 79 LGAs. We call them neighbourhood assessments. So we can work out the demographics, cultural background, unemployment rates, income rates, how many schools there are, how many charities there are, how many fresh food outlets there are, how far you have to go to get to a fresh food outlet. And once we understand that, we can put a community food plan together and deliver it in partnership with the community to make sure that we get the right food to the right people at the right time. And the other thing we want to do is make sure there's no impediment to getting that food, that people are welcomed with, open arms, and there's no feelings of, I've got to go to a dank place around a back lane to, we're bright, colourful, enthusiasm for feeding people. So we've got, during COVID, Skybus, which is now Kinetic, had these large articulated buses that were no good to them because the airports were closed.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So they helped us and they refitted those as supermarkets. So now we can go into a community, but before we go in, using those neighbourhood assessments, we know who will turn up. So we make sure the bus is filled with the food that they want. Yeah. And then we work with small community groups and schools to invite the people that we know wouldn't necessarily turn up to a charity.
Yeah.
But they will turn up to this because it doesn't feel like a charity.
Yeah, a bit more like a market.
Yeah. So we run farms to family markets.
Yeah.
The mobile supermarket. We ran a supermarket for international students during the lockdowns because international students got no financial support from the federal government. They weren't allowed to leave.
Yeah, that was crazy.
It was.
Yeah.
So I think I get the numbers wrong a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was something like 100 and something different nationalities came through. And that's when we started to understand that, food relief isn't just food relief. It's actually relief for an individual with food that they know and love and understand how to use. So that sort of influences now how we approach helping people.
Yeah, I like that. That's really, it's a bit more targeted.
Yeah.
Because I guess, if you get given a whole bunch of food but you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Like if someone gave me pomegranates, I would go hungry, probably. Or some of these vegetables I don't understand that taste terrible unless you know how to cook them or whatever. That was really nice to see when that rolled out. That was good. And I like your big purple trucks and you always see them burning around, the big trucks and the vans and the stuff like that, like really spreading the message. I'm a really big fan of that because like at the end of the day, food is a non-negotiable. And it's so I think about this a lot. Your social media feed is pumped with ads of stuff you don't need. Like it's constantly filled with stuff you don't need.
Yeah.
Buy this new something or other. These are just businesses trying to sell this stuff, but it is stuff that won't be make or break to your life. Whereas food is...
It's a basic human right. It's a human need.
Without it, you are no more.
Yep.
There is no life beyond no food. So it's incredible that we have to work so hard to have to do this as well, and that we throw away so much good food, and that we... how do we... Is there a way to change that as well? How do we change the attitude towards food and the throwing of food and that sort of stuff?
I think people now are starting to appreciate the value of food. I mean, food inflation's running at 10%, whereas inflation's running at 7%. So people are now seeing that, hang on, that costs a lot of money. What's my choices here? Unfortunately, if you're disadvantaged or struggling financially, you're more likely to make cheap food decisions than you are healthy food decisions, because healthy food is generally more expensive than cheap food. And that what that means is that it's nutrition poor but energy dense. So you see the flow and effects in the health system through diabetes, heart disease, obesity,
Of course.
because people just don't have a choice, and then they become addicted to these foods because of the sugar and salt and fat contents,
Yes.
because they're comforting.
Yep.
So really it's about education.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned that, sometimes you don't know what to do with an ingredient. So we're very careful now to make sure that when you do turn up at our markets, we've got information cards, 4-step recipe.
All right.
Simple way to use that ingredient. So if you make it easy for people, they're more willing to, try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because we've gone through this, like we're in an era in the last, or let's call it 100, I don't know how long, but you now just walk into the supermarket and you can pick off the shelf a food that is not in season. Now, it's not also, doesn't mean it's unreal. It might be a bit ordinary compared to when it's in season, but you can buy out of season food because we've worked out ways of growing it, storing it, whatever, and getting it on the shelf all year round. Before supermarkets and this kind of revolution in storage and agriculture and whatever, we ate what was in season. So when strawberries were in, we ate strawberries, and it was strawberry season. Everyone celebrated. But then you'd only be eating it fresh because it's the only time it was available, and then you would have the different foods through winter or whatever, and then the spring come along, and so. But now because we can just pick off the shelf, but I think that's caused other issues. That's got your ugly fruit. That's got your the stuff that people reject because it doesn't look fantastic, so we're not going to buy it, which causes the wastage, which causes, with no shortage of food. We've got food.
We're part of the problem.
Yeah.
We want that perfect snow white apple.
Yep.
We want asparagus when it's out of season. So, we're bringing asparagus from Mexico, oranges from California,
Yep.
because we just want them then.
Yep.
We want them now.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't live in harmony in the flow of when food is available. We just want things when we want them.
Yeah.
At the expense of the planet. The food system is essentially broken because we're out of sync with the planet and how food's grown. So we need to recalibrate, not the planet, we need to recalibrate around food.
Yeah. And what would you say would be a way to start doing that?
I think we should look at things like regenerative farming practices that actually give back to the soil rather than take out of it constantly. We've moved to monocultures. I think we've got corn, wheat, soy, sugar. I can't remember the 7 basic ingredients, but that's what our agriculture is essentially based on now. There's not a rainbow of diversity in our foods that are available to us, and basically we're getting narrower and narrower in our perspective of what foods we eat. Like there's different packages out there with different combinations of those ingredients put together, but essentially it's a broken system. And if we want to have agency over our food, then we have to look at food itself and understand how it's grown, where it's grown, when it's grown, and recalibrate ourselves to the seasons around us and the world around us.
Yeah, balance. It's a balance with the earth, and Australia is capable of growing pretty much everything we need. Like we have all the climates.
Yeah, we're a net exporter of food.
Yeah.
And as you said, there's a lot of food waste.
Yeah.
Again, that's us driving as much as the retailers are involved in that as well.
Yeah.
What sort of bananas we want and what apples we want,
Yeah. And even it's a lesson I try and pass on to the children, like when they turn their nose up to a spotty banana. And you're like, there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
But they're just, they're no different to the person who's picking them off the shelf, who's rejecting that fruit just because it looks a bit funny or weird and whatever. And like if you have ever grown food yourself, tomatoes, whatever, you always get the weird one.
Yeah.
I've had some lemons that have been the weirdest looking lemons you've ever had, but they still have the nutrition or the thing that all the other lemons have.
Juice is the same.
Yeah, that's right. So it doesn't make any difference. And so if we could, if people, even just by not rejecting the ugly fruit, that would make a massive difference, wouldn't it?
Yeah. None of us are perfect. And yet we want our fruit and vegetables to be perfect.
Yeah, and it's not possible.
No.
I mean, we change what it looks like all the time anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know, I was talking to someone who's from Brazil recently, and they were saying they came here and they found the tomatoes funny because they all eat underripe tomatoes in Brazil. They always eat effectively
Green
green.
ones.
They're greeny red. They're not quite like full green, but they eat green tomatoes, and that's just how they eat them. And she come here and they just didn't like the tomatoes when we first year because they're too ripe.
Yep.
And eventually she's grown to love, ripe tomatoes now. But just interesting, the difference in cultures and.
Well, that is what's interesting, is food and culture.
Yeah.
And, if you look at Australia's diet now, a multicultural community is reflected through our food.
Yeah.
When colonial Australia arrived, we incorporated some of the indigenous cultures of foods into our diet because they didn't really have much choice. They were almost starving.
Mm.
And then we developed more and more food tastes and reflections of communities as those communities arrived. Generally, at the barrel of a gun, a lot of the people arrived in Australia, whether it was from, transportation or wars in Vietnam, Europe, etc. And each of those communities, when they arrived in Australia, brought their food with them.
Mm.
And so now we celebrate the fact that you can walk down the street and see a Greek, a Vietnamese, an Italian. That is who we are as a community. And I think that if we can just recognise the value that brings to us as a society, and then look at the food that has been the glue that brought us all together, then you get to understand how important food is to the concept of being human and being civilised.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of cliches around breaking bread and sharing meals and stuff like that. You have a meal with someone, you've crossed a social barrier with them.
First dates, marriages, deaths. Food's always
it's always
a part
of it. Yeah, yeah. Apart from the obvious, donating food, donating money, what else can people do to support Foodbank or in general the crisis?
So look, we work through 500 charities across Victoria. Names that everyone will know: Salvo, St Vinny's, Uniting Cares, neighbourhood houses. We work through 1,000 state primary, secondary schools. So there is always the need for people to help. So if you have the ability, then find somewhere in your local community, one of those places, a school or a charity, and ask if you can help. You might know people that are struggling. If that's the case, just reach out. Just ask. People are proud. I get that. But also people not like to know that other people care, because you can feel very isolated. And once you start to be isolated, then you don't become part of community anymore. And I think that's the greatest tragedy of this, is that people don't feel a connection to each other. And that seems to be all the things that are going wrong in the world, is this lack of connection and understanding. We all like a binary yes or a no. So I think food is a great way of connecting each of us. So volunteering you'll get more out of volunteering personally than you do out of serving, giving back to other people. You'll 10 times more.
Yeah.
So volunteering.
Come down and help. And you rely a lot on your volunteers at the warehouse and things, don't you? Like, you have a lot of volunteers who
Yeah. So we've got, about 110 staff, but we've got 190 community volunteers, and then we have corporate volunteers through every day. Mm-hmm. So when I say we're a community organisation, we couldn't do it without the community helping us.
Yeah.
And that's financially or with work.
Yep. And they come down, they're literally packing boxes of stuff.
They're doing everything. They're packing boxes and orders for charities. They're sorting through fruit and veg and making up hampers. They're helping in the office. They're out at markets helping distribute food, on the mobile supermarket, helping people. Yeah.
Yeah. And do they need any training or qualifications to do this?
Well, we provide basic safety and instruction in how to do things, but generally not. Just an attitude and good physical health.
Yeah. And is there any particular skills that are useful to you at the moment?
All skills are useful.
Yeah.
It's just depending on what the person wants to do to help and whether we can accommodate that.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Well, I think I want to say again too, if you want to, the way that we support you is through the sales of our coffee. So feel free to jump onto iogn.com.au, and again, every purchase contributes money towards Foodbank, and you get delicious coffee at the same time. And the biggest, which we should have opened with this, Dave, is that your tagline is every dollar donated is 2 meals created.
Yep.
Now, just sit on that for a moment. If you donate $1 to Foodbank, 2 people get an evening meal.
Yeah, and that doesn't matter where they are in Victoria. From Mildura to Mallacoota,
Yep.
it's sourcing it, warehousing it, and distributing it,
Yeah.
and getting it on a plate.
Which is an unbelievable turnaround.
Yeah, and the great thing about that is it's not just food; it's the right food to the right people at the right time.
Yep.
It's culturally appropriate,
Yep.
safe. They know how to use it.
Yeah. Keep them healthy. I mean, you got to put. I say this to the kids: you can't put sand in the petrol tank. You've got to put the right things in to get the right things out.
Yep.
And that's not just from thinking about sports people and stuff. They focus on this a lot, but day-to-day function and longevity of life as well. Like if you don't have the right diet for extended periods of time, you're on the wrong diet. Like it'll.
Well, studies have shown mental health and a direct correlation to healthy food.
Yep. And the gut being a second brain and all that stuff.
As I said, healthy body, healthy mind. Nothing changes if nothing changes.
That's
if
profound,
the first thing is that you start changing your diet with 1 or 2 fresh new ingredients, then slowly you'll see that you're starting to change. Not just your body, but the way you think, the way that you approach the world. You start to recognize things, and suddenly you're a bit more grateful and engaged with the world around you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, Dave, you're a busy man and you've got an important job to do, and I've really appreciated the time you've taken out to come talk to us today.
My pleasure.
It's been nice. We've been gifted with a beautiful sunny day here in Melbourne, which may be few and far between coming up. So I'll appreciate that. You've got an important job to do, but we're very thankful of the work that you and the team do down at Foodbank. If you're listening or watching, please support them as much as they can, because quite literally it could be your next door neighbour, or it might be yourself. Go down and get food if you need the food. But support Foodbank in any way we can, and each other. Dave McNamara, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been the Good People podcast, brought to you by In Other Good News. My name is Andy. Thank you, Dave, for coming on the show.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Well, it's a tip of the cap, it's a pat on the back, it's a smile from ear to ear. They're the good people from round here. They're the good people from round here. Come on, let me introduce you to a few.